The lights on the debate stage were blinding. Red, white, and blue glared from behind the podiums, casting long shadows on the hardwood floor. The cameras were already live. Millions of Americans were watching, some from their living rooms, others from phone screens as they sat in restaurants, bars, subway stations. It was supposed to be just another night in the long slog of political theater. 2 men, 2 visions for America, 1 debate. The format was tired, the talking points predictable. But then, everything changed with a single word. The insult didn't come during the opening statements or the economic sparring. It didn't erupt during healthcare arguments or border policy skirmishes. It came quietly, in the closing minutes. Calm, calculated, deliberate. Congressman Schiff adjusted his tie and leaned slightly into the microphone. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "We're not just fighting bad policies," he said. "We're fighting the rise of populist thuggery in a tailored suit in Kennedy. Well, he's the poster boy. It's a thug in a suit." There was a moment of silence that followed, a void too loud to ignore. Then came the sound. Low. Murmur. Gasps. A cough from somewhere in the crowd. The moderator's eyes widened slightly, but she said nothing. The producers in the control room scrambled. On social media, Donnas flew like lightning. The nation was split in half before Kennedy even opened his mouth. But Kennedy didn't reply. That night, he simply looked at Schiff, nodded once, and walked off the stage without shaking hands. It was the calm before the storm. In the hours that followed, the media world exploded. Cable news rolled the clip over and over, analyzing every syllable, every eyebrow twitch, every moment of that now famous phrase. Some networks praised Schiff for telling it like it is. They called it a brave stand against street style politics. Others, especially those with deeper memory or darker history, saw something else: a coded attack. An echo of every time someone who looked like Kennedy had been dismissed, profiled, or demonized across Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. One question echoed louder than the insult itself. What will Kennedy say back? But he said nothing. 3 days passed, then 5, then a full week. No tweets, no interviews, no public appearances, not even a press release from his team. Pundits grew impatient, supporters worried, critics mocked. He's scared. He knows Schiff struck a nerve. Typical thug behavior run when cornered. Kennedy wasn't running. He was preparing. Long before he stood on debate stages or headlined rallies, Kennedy walked streets with cracked pavement and bullet holes and stop signs. He wasn't raised in ivory towers or behind manicured gates. He was born where streetlights blinked because no one fixed them, where teachers cried over empty desks. He'd been called many things in his life: poor, dangerous, outspoken. But one word had always followed him like a shadow in a well-lit room: thug. It was never said outright at first. Came with looks, whispers, coded phrases. Then, as he climbed into politics, the whisper turned into a label that opponents wore. Like a shield, he's not like us. He's rough around the edges. Kennedy learned to speak their language, dress their way, play their games. But no matter how far he climbed, they always saw the boy from the block, not the man in the mirror. And that's why Schiff's words hit so hard. It wasn't about an insult. It was about history, identity, survival. 10 days after the debate, Kennedy finally announced he would speak, not at a podium, not on a debate stage, but in the heart of the city. He came from Newark, New Jersey. It was held at an old basketball gym where Kennedy once volunteered as a teen. The crowd was standing room only. Cameras lined the walls. Phones were raised like torches. Kennedy stepped onto the stage wearing a simple dark suit, no tie, no notes. It's just truth. "When a man in a suit calls you a thug," he began, "he's not talking about your policies. He's talking about your place, or the place he thinks you belong." Room went silent. "I've been called worse, but never by a man who knows me less. Let me tell you what a thug really is. Because where I'm from, it means something else. It means surviving a world that wasn't made for you. It means walking through fire and still holding the door open for others behind you. It means refusing to stay silent when silence is safer. So if that makes me a thug, then maybe we need more of them." The crowd erupted. He wasn't done. "I am not the problem with this country. I am the product of it. I am proof that your zip code doesn't define your destiny." Called me a thug because he thought the word would wound me. But I've been called worse by better men, so let me reclaim it. Let me spell it out for you. THUG stands for the honest, unafraid guardian. Guardian of my community. Guardian of the truth. Guardian of the promise that this country is supposed to offer all of us, not just the privileged few. The video of that speech crossed 30 million views in 24 hours. Asterisk, every cable news outlet led with it. The speech played on a loop from New York to LA, in airports, barbershops, and classrooms. Hashtags changed, narratives flipped. Even critics, those who had called Kennedy too raw or too angry, now paused. Some revised their takes, others fell silent altogether. For Schiff, the fallout was immediate. His campaign scrambled to control the damage. Press releases flooded inboxes, claiming his words were misinterpreted, that it was political hyperbole. But the public wasn't buying it. His approval numbers, slipped endorsements were paused. An op-ed from a prominent historian struck the cultural nerve. When you call a man a thug, you're not debating, you're declaring that he doesn't belong in your America. And Kennedy. He surged. Donations flooded in. Volunteer numbers tripled. Voters who had once been on the fence now stood firm behind him. His speech was turned into t-shirts, murals, even classroom lesson plans. It wasn't just a campaign now. It was a movement. If Schiff had hoped the story would fade, he underestimated the fire he'd started. Every political commentator had a take. Late-night comedy shows cut sketches of thug in a suit versus suit without a soul. Memes exploded across the internet, Kennedy as a superhero, Schiff as a cartoon villain in a country club, but beneath the noise, real conversations were happening. Across dinner tables, people asked, what does it really mean to be called a thug in America? Podcasts dove into the origins of the word, its racial and class implications, its historical weaponization. Scholars and activists weighed in. A single insult had cracked open a national truth. A week after Kennedy's reply, the two men were invited to appear together on America Tonight, a primetime Sunday broadcast watched by over 10 million viewers. Weekly. Kennedy accepted, Schiff declined. His team released a statement. The congressman believes the national dialogue has been sufficiently addressed. That night, Kennedy appeared alone. He didn't gloat. He didn't shout. He told stories about his mother, who worked 2 jobs and still found time to help neighbors. About his cousin, who died at 19 because the hospital was underfunded, and 2, far about walking into the Capitol building for the first time and feeling eyes that said, "You don't belong here." And then he said something that sealed the moment. "I'm not trying to destroy the system. I'm trying to make sure it finally works for people like me too." The speech and the fallout catapulted Kennedy from underdog to frontrunner. But he wasn't interested in just the momentum. He turned it into action. Within days, he proposed the THUG Actius. He named it after the insult. The bill focused on expanding public education in low-income areas, reforming sentencing laws for nonviolent offenses, investing in job creation in historically underserved communities. Critics mocked the name, but supporters rallied behind it. He took the word that was meant to break him and made it a banner, and behind that banner, people began to march. Months later, in a quiet middle school in Detroit, a teacher played Kennedy's reply speech for a group of 8th graders. Most of them came from neighborhoods that the news never showed unless something burned or broke. One boy raised his hand afterward. "Miss Jackson," he asked, "can a thug be a good guy?" The teacher smiled. "You just watched one," she said. And across the country, other kids were asking the same thing. By the time the next major debate came, Kennedy wasn't just another candidate. He was a symbol, a walking, talking contradiction of everything. The political elite thought made a man presidential. He didn't have the cleanest past. He didn't come from wealth. He didn't always use the right words. But he had something more powerful, truth, a backbone forged in fire. And when he walked onto that next stage, the crowd didn't wait for him to speak. They stood, cheering, clapping, chanting. One word that had once been an insult. T-H-U-G. 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 Schiff watched from backstage, arms folded, silent, stoic, and maybe, just maybe, regretting the day he said the one word that built a revolution